the little comment sections with some folks. Waiting for the Varsity Center is what it says on YouTube. Very exciting. One of the most thrilling aspects of this, right? We're just a whole lot of waiting. A whole lot of waiting. Well, no. Okay, cool. And now it's populating up, and we've actually got an interview going on. I'm going to take that over. I'm going to drop that into Facebook. So anybody that happens to be somehow, some way tuning in at this very moment, at this very beginning of the interview, is going to be in for all the most exciting things going on right now. Like Nathan plugging and chugging on the computer. Here's the interview link. So born and raised in Paducah, what brought you over to Southern Illinois?
Well, still trying to figure that one out.
Now you're just stuck like in bad mud, man.
Yeah, for a little bit, and getting out of this thing.
YouTube. Yeah, people can. Oh, well, you got to probably talking to your mic. So, yeah, now we're just talking. Now we're just sorry. I didn't throw that part out. Like, hey, yeah, no, we're totally just chatting and going. But I mean, that's kind of a sentiment that plenty of people feel right now. So I don't think you're gonna like find too much pushback from an audience being like, oh yeah, you mean he wants to get out of Illinois? I can believe that one.
I'm gonna be like Ray Charles and hit the road.
Hey man, we'd still have you back. You know, maybe for one more.
Oh yeah. I'll travel all over.
So Brittany came and did an interview with you today because you were going singing door to door.
Yes, sir.
How many of those have you done so far?
I can't honestly tell you.
You're like, because then the cops would get me. No,
That's right. Can't tell you how many numbers of the people were there.
Right. We're just gonna.
But I can show you a picture.
Right. What you can tell me is you kept a solid 10 foot away from everybody, and it was all in the clear.
Absolutely. Just like if you look on my Facebook page, you'll see a picture of Brittany and I, and we are, well, we're not 6 foot apart. I think somebody already commented on that earlier. So
right.
That don't look like social distancing to me.
Well, hey, as far as I'm concerned, in our big thing is all about the contact tracing, right? So long as we know that there's one of you, one of me, and however this goes down is what we get to on the other end. I think we're halfway okay. This has been a heck of a time, man, for entertainers as a whole, and you are without a doubt like a true blue entertainer, man. I was really blown away this evening. I'm not usually that wow like a show. Like it's just, you know, when you're used to producing stuff, it's not something that you go too crazy for. But Kara was like, "What are you?" Our executive director was like, "What are you doing? Jonathan's a big deal. Like you got to get out there and push this. You can't just do this in 2 days." I was like, "Well, we're gonna, and we'll see how it goes." Yeah. And now that I've seen you live, man, I'm like, I get it. I get why you're a big deal, man. Yeah. I love it. I absolutely love it. How the heck did you get hooked up with Ronnie McDowell?
Well, you know, I started working with Ronnie McDowell through the a cappella group Blend, and we actually were in Columbus, Ohio. Gosh, I can't even think of the year that was. But we were at the Ohio Fair Managers Convention, and we were showcasing to try to get work at different county fairs. And I'm sitting there at the back of the room with our agent, and I looked over. I said, "Hey," I said, "is that Ronnie McDowell?" He said, "Yeah." And I said, "Wow." I said, "Do you think he'd mind if I went up and introduced myself, told him who I was, and that I enjoyed his music?" I will never forget what that agent told me that day. He said, "No." He said, "I don't think Ronnie would mind, but he probably don't care." You know, there's a lot of entertainers, you know, yeah. But that's completely different with Ronnie McDowell.
Uh-huh.
So, you know, I'm sitting there and I thought, well, I can listen to this guy who just told me that, or I can just go and find out for myself. So I went over towards Ronnie McDowell. And I ain't going to tell you I wasn't nervous, because I was. I was shaking like all shook up from that Elvis song I sang earlier tonight. But I get over to Ronnie and I said, "Hey, Ronnie," I said, "my name's Jonathan." And I said, I've been a big fan of yours since I was a little kid." And he said, "Well, I appreciate that." But he said, "Don't ever say that again." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Saying since you were a little kid makes me feel like I'm old." And from there, I felt at ease. And so it wasn't long after that, 3 months later, we get a phone call to go perform in Branson. And get this, it was at the Dick Clark American Bandstand Theater. And that's where our first show with Ronnie McDowell was. From there, we went to my hometown, birth town, Paducah, Kentucky, where we sang backup for him there, and T.G. Shepherd. Pretty cool deal. That's where I met my good buddy Jimmy Jones from Lightning Productions. And struck up a friendship there. And I won't forget, right after that show, the next day was Easter, Ronnie McDowell called me on Easter and said, Johnathan, he said, I like you boys being on my show. And he said, I want to help y'all out. And he said, all you need's a hit, and you'll be on your way. And from that moment on, he started opening up his heart to us as a group. And then when the group retired, he stuck with me and has been helping me ever since. I'm grateful.
How important is storytelling to what you do? I mean, I'm really, that is, because again, like I said, that any production of a show, it's just like that's the job in here. But what really to me impresses with talent is the ability to storytell, right? And you wrap that in the midst of the dancing and the singing and the music making and all that other stuff. Like, how important do you think that ability to tell a story is to your performance persona?
Well, it's just like when you read a book and you're reading a story, which I learned when I was teaching. It's all about how you weave the tale. It's about how you tell the story. You can tell it just monotone, or you can get a little excited about it, things that you want folks to get excited about, and that's going to make the world a difference. It's a part of show business and entertainment, I believe. But I believe it's key because, especially all the folks that follow me, a lot of people want to hear stories and hear about who you are as an entertainer. And there's a lot of people, Nathan, been following me for years. They've heard that same story about the Little Debbie cake over and over. And I know this because people will come up and bring me boxes of honey buns. Kid you not. And I love it. It just makes me feel so special. So storytelling is huge in my shows. It's a part of who I am. But, look, I learned a lot from working with one of the greatest entertainers in the business, my buddy Ronnie McDowell. And you saw him here when we were on this stage. Back on Elvis's birthday celebration a year ago, this past January. And so, you got to see firsthand the man entertaining himself. And I was blessed to come out on this stage and sing back up and then just come out and sing that first single, You Will Never Leave My Mind. That was through Danny Raspberry Productions. Great outfit and organization he's got. But, yeah, storytelling is huge in my shows.
Yeah.
Obviously, right now, I ain't even stopping talking.
Well, that's saying something, man, because usually I'm the one that talks too darn much. So that you've tapped me out on that one, I'm pretty impressed, man. And I tell you, if I had fans that brought me honey buns every time we did a show, I wouldn't just look like adult Bobby Hill. That is my kind of beeline.
Dang it, Bobby.
Yeah, that's it. Dang it, Bobby. But Dad, I like to tell the joke. My wife actually loves it. It's kind of her thing. Turns out I am her purse. She does know me. People, it's a hoot. It's a hoot, man. So you talked about mom kind of being the one that's always been the one that's gotten you into music. I mean, is that just how it's always been? It's like every time you've discovered something or taken that next step, it's basically mom's fault because she was there playing this movie with this music or playing that thing on the radio or, driving down the road and listening to this.
Oh, absolutely. Because if I didn't hear it in a movie that she'd bring home, and she knew when I was a kid I love old movies. My Girl. That had all the hit, Temptations, that big hit from them. And it's the movies that are set back in that era. And I believe, she had a heart for them too. Well, she still does. But, just that music. And then, of course, back then, there was a Cape Girardeau, Missouri radio station called KGMO, 100.7 KGMO radio. Mm-hmm. And they played oldies. Even not just the music. Like I said, it was a soundtrack to my life, but even old TV shows. I'm the biggest fan of Andy Griffith. Have every episode, and get this, my mother got it for me for Christmas one year. Every episode. Watch The Christmas Story every year. Pickle Story, that's a good one. But, just stuff from back then has a way of touching my heart. Matter of fact, I was in the middle of watching an old black and white movie that had Alan Freed in it. You remember Alan Freed?
I don't. Not for the life of me. I'm sorry.
They called him Mr. Rock and Roll because he founded... he didn't. He brought rock and roll onto the scene when it wasn't a big thing for that type of audience here in the country. But it was an old movie that's got Bill Haley in it called Rock Around the Clock. I mean, I'm at home watching that, and it's got live footage of the Platters, who I sang a little bit of Only You, and of course they had The Great Pretender. But yeah, I mean, even in my truck, when I go down the road, I have Sirius XM. 50s on 5 is huge for me. 60s on 6. Then I'll flip over and listen to Willie's Roadhouse, which is old country music, prime country. And then I'll flip over and do 80s on 8. And I'll be like, I ain't missing you at all. I mean, I love it all. Very well-rounded with music. And yes, I blame it on my mama. It's all her fault because she raised me on it.
You got a song called Blame It On Your Mama yet?
Well, you can say that it's somebody else's fault. You can point the fingers no matter what the cost. But it all comes back to that woman who raised me. My mama who blessed me with the music on the CD. I just made that up. I don't know.
Hey man, I mean, no, that's like the start of it. I mean,
Yeah.
if I was sitting here and I was doing an interview, with some of the local hip hop performers that I know, man, it'd be like, all right, here's a track and like lay down a freestyle. But it's like, right here, it's like, all right, cool. I'm gonna ask Johnathan about his mama, and it's like we're gonna just pin a little heart tattoo with mom on the middle of it, lyrically in the middle of the show. I love it, man. You're in the midst of producing music that's kind of a throwback to older times, right? Just, years gone by that was precursor to all sorts of music genre that we know now. Now here's where it's going to be like the in-depth, like digging at your brain kind of question. Like, what do you see as the evolution for you as an artist? Like, where do you want to take not just your music next, but like, how do you want to take a genre and, no pun intended, I already said this once tonight, blend it with whatever is occurring in the here and now to create your own modern product that is just signature Johnathan Len?
Well, that's a good question, and I've got a good answer for you.
Spectacular.
But and here's what it boils down to, because that music has been such a soundtrack to my life when I was a kid, and even, well, still today, in country music as well. My heart is really with that older country stuff, 80s, 90s country. I love it. That's why I listen to prime country. But, that's who I am, and especially like Conway Twitty. I was just on the phone with my buddy Little David Wilkins, that song I mentioned, Georgia Keeps Pulling on My Ring. That was a big hit for Conway Twitty, that Conway and Charlie Pride. See, I know that because I listened to that music. But David said, you got a lot of Conway in you. And I said, well, I got a lot of everybody in me. Buddy Holly. When I was a little kid, I had to write for Mrs. Thurston. I remember Miss Thurston, we had to write a biography on an entertainer or anybody, honestly, and I picked Buddy Holly because at that time his music was so inspirational to me. And, of course, Statler Brothers. I've been blessed to work with Jimmy Fortune in the group Blend. And so really, when it comes to my music, I pick out songs that I hear songwriters have written that, to me, have a connection or a feel. And, for instance, I heard an old Conway song that Conway recorded called Someday You'll Love Me. It was written by Even Stevens and Hillary Cantor, and I thought, I love that sound. I love the feel. It was a good feel song. And so I called up my producer, and I said, Stacy, I want to record this song, but I don't want it to be sounding like it's supposed to be on the radio. Now, he did make it modern, but it still had that early 90s country feel because that's who I am. So when it comes to my music and who Johnathan Len is as an artist, you'll hear that the rock and roll sounds, my own distinct style is built and derived from all these different artists who have influenced me. And the bottom line is I do music that inspires and touches my heart, but I hope that it comes through me and those speakers to my listeners, my audience, and they connect with it just like the music that influenced me that I connected with. So there you go.
Polished, man. I mean, that's it. Like I said, just impressed because it's everything. I mean, you could get paraded around Nashville by a manager to 8 different radio shows to promote a concert in a given night, and you would nail it every single time. And it doesn't matter if it'd be a crowd of 10, a crowd of 2 like it is in this room, if it's a crowd of 10,000, that it'd be the same level of Johnathan that people are going to get every time. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, absolutely. A good friend gave me a book called Never Look at the Empty Seats, Charlie Daniels' book. And that teaches you a lot, that it don't matter how many people are in the crowd. you still entertain folks. And not just that, Ronnie McDowell. I go back to Ronnie a lot because he's taught me so much. But that's the honest to God truth. It don't matter how many people are in that audience. You entertain them and you give them a show. And that's what I do.
That's great. That's great. Well, and as a stand-up comedian, I'm comfortable, in always giving that show to the 5 people that may happen to show up for one. Now, the difference is your shows actually have talent in them, so we thank you for bringing that to the stage. It's
Being
man,
a comedian right now.
yeah,
See?
that's right. That's right. Even if I'm the only one laughing, at least somebody's doing it. That's that's the trick to it, man. Oh,
Laughter's
shucks.
contagious, buddy.
What and that's I'm hoping it's more contagious than the stuff that's going on outside right now. Ain't that the
See,
truth?
he just made it funny. No
That's
pun
right.
intended.
Boom, there. Let's see. Where do I want to go in my mind with all this stuff? We talked a little bit about Ronnie McDowell. We talked a little bit about the backgrounding, about mama's influence and all that. Do you miss the time running around with the guys in the a cappella group Blend? I mean, you guys spent a decade plus together.
12 years.
12 years.
And of course, that Blend will always have a place in my heart, and the memories that we shared, just fond memories. My good buddy who was in the group, Aaron Chamness, I'm buddies with all of them. Yeah. But Aaron used to tell people, he said, we fight like brothers, or something, whatever it was, fight like brothers and sisters, or something. I don't remember. But anyhow, that was the truth. We were brothers, but fought like sisters. There it is. Brothers, but fought like sisters. See, some stuff I'm not good at talking about. But that was the truth. But I wouldn't trade it for anything, because we would grow through those things. The brotherhood, and of course the sound that you would hear when we would hit a song, and gosh, it felt amazing. So of course I'll always have a place for Blend in my heart. But there's a season for everything, as the good Lord says, and we had to let that go, and that's okay, because we still get together every once in a while and do a little singing. So it's still a good thing for us.
You're like the Southern Illinois Beyonce right now, or the Southern Illinois Justin Timberlake. It's not that all of NSYNC and all the Destiny's Child wasn't right there and isn't still good where they're at. It just happens to be that Johnathan is our Justin Timberlake, and that's all right. That's all right. You're bringing sexy back, and that's another fun question that I got for you right now, man. Because you're talking about going to these nursing homes and some other unique venues where folks get a little close to you, right? And you get to do a little hip shaking. You ever get a little? Yeah. You ever have some older folks ever get a little too handsy with you at a show?
Well, it's like my buddy's song. Older women are beautiful lovers. Okay, wait a second. Yes, that song's true. But yeah, folks just have a good time, and of course. Yeah, I'll just leave it at there. Yes.
I love it, because I'm trying to crack you open and get a little bit of like natural John in there. And you're like, nope, I'm keeping it baseline. I got the performer stacked, and I'm not letting it loose. Oh, that's great. That's great. But I mean, that's those are the ways to build careers, right? And to get those steps, and like that is the work, right? It's if you're working at a retail shop or a restaurant or a large corporation or whatever, you work your way up in a corporate chain of like, okay, I start at the bottom and I get promoted to a manager and I get promoted to director and so on and so forth. But for an artist, it's not like that. You've just got to go out there and like keep working until you get that next door open to that next larger stage. What's that feel like?
It can be tough, Nathan. It really can. It can be tough, wear you out. But if your heart's in it, I don't care if it's entertaining, performing, if it's being a comedian, if it's teaching school, if it's working at the Dollar General store. If your heart's in it, you're going to be happy, and you'll be happy regardless of the results, because that's what you're passionate about. So, for me, of course, there's shows where there may not be enough energy in a crowd, like maybe the night before, or maybe something happens and you're going to a show and you got to blow out, and it makes your day go kind of haywire or something. But you just thank the good Lord that you're 6 feet above ground and you're able to get out there and do what you love. And if you're passionate about it, all that little stuff doesn't amount to a hill of beans. So being honest with you, outside of being the entertainer, sure, it gets tough. There's some days where you're just like, man. But you'll get a phone call, or you'll get a letter, or I say letter because I get letters, and I love it. I get cards in the mail. I get Easter cards, Christmas cards. and I read every one of them. I love them. I got this thing where I take a little, if I get it in the mail, I like to take a picture with it, and then I'll send that back to the person, you know, a little selfie, send it to them if they're on social media. But, you know, I mean, that stuff right there is what keeps me going. When stuff gets tough, you know, but the bottom line is if you're passionate about it, you love it, and you take the good with the bad. There you go.
What would you be if you weren't a singer and a dancer and an all-around spectacular entertainer?
All right, I kid you not. When I was a little kid, I used to I would take cassette tapes, record music off the radio, then grab a 4x6 note card and write down all the songs that were on this cassette and the artist, and then I would play it back, and I would pretend that I was a DJ. Kid you not, that's what I did. And I was in like 3rd, 4th grade when I was doing that. So still to this day, I mean, I will just be playing around and have my friends around, and I'll be like, oh, yeah, we're going to 1958. We got this tune right here from Mr. Buddy Holly and the Crickets. A little bit of, oh, boy, see if you can sing along. And then, all of my love. And it kicks right into the record. That's what I would do. Of course, I have a lot of great influences from radio. Wolfman Jack. Saw him in Carbondale, Illinois, over at the SIU Arena when I was a kid. And guess whose fault that was? My mama. She took me. But, you know, what a great radio personality. And then my good buddy, Bear on the Air. He's down at Paducah, Kentucky, Willie 102 Radio. John Michael Marty at WSMI up in Hillsboro. Wes Bennett. He's a local favorite here with WGGH, Monster Radio. Kent Zimmer. Of course, Julie Ingram back in the day. I mean, the list goes on and on with all these folks that when I was a kid. Country music, Bob Kingsley. And the Country Countdown. K103, when I was a little kid, I loved Bob James. I don't know if any of y'all remember him, but gosh, that was a big memory of mine, hanging out with my uncle. I'd be holding a can of Coca-Cola and drinking it and thought I was the king of the world hanging out with my uncle, listening to K103 music out of Cape Girardeau, and Bob James would be the disc jockey or radio personality. So, long story made short, I would be a radio personality.
Nice. That's not too far off. You're like, I was always destined to be this one way or the other. This is where I was coming to. Would you ever be a motivational speaker?
Well, I'd give it some thought.
I'm just telling you, man, the ability to tell a story, it wraps together so well with every other talent that you got. And it just happens to be my favorite component. So that's what I stick with on there. Let's see, just thinking through my mind here. I mean, I've had a blast this evening. This has been good. That's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the show itself, because you were, man, we were setting this up. And first off, for anybody that's at home right now and you're going, man, that middle camera is awfully, I don't know what the word is, blown out. It's like, because this guy brought a pair of bright white pants with him. And he had a bright white shirt on at first, and that was a little much. So we tried a lesser, like a not so bright shirt and darker pants. That didn't work. So we switched to the dark shirt, but we had the bright pants and the back and forth and the back and forth. And that's where he ended up landing at. So that was quite fun. But my favorite part of this whole show was working to keep up with you on this stage. Do you often perform for cameras, like for, you know, kind of a stage setup like this, or is this something that is kind of different because, well, the times necessitate it right now for you?
It is absolutely different. When all this mess happened, you know, this is all I do for a full-time living, and I'm very blessed. Been doing that for 4 years now. 2 of the years just as a solo artist. But, you know, when all this happened, I said, I'm not going to do the Facebook Lives. Everybody and their uncles are doing them. And I finally gave in because my fans wanted to hear some music. So my first show was it was a Johnathan Len and his music and the stories behind them. So I did basically only the songs that I'd recorded. And it was weird at first, but my good buddy over at Biassy Music in Marion, Matt Throgmorton, which takes care of all my sound, by the way, but he helped me out and kind of made me feel at ease. But it was so weird because, yeah, that's the show. That's the audience right there. The rest of the room was empty. And I was like, I feel like I'm dancing like a goofball. And I made comments like, dance like nobody's watching, which nobody was watching in the room, but all these viewers are watching. It's tough as could be.
Yeah.
But, you know, since then I've done some other shows, and, you know, you get a little more at ease with it, and you just kind of, I don't like when people say it's the new norm. I don't, it's the new temporary norm. So, if I'm gonna perform in cameras a lot more as the days, months, years go on, with various different avenues, hey, maybe one day I'll get on TV and perform in front of camera, and I'm gonna say, hey, from my buddy at the Varsity Center, Nathan, I'm a pro. I can go from that camera to that one, and he did a great job keeping up with it. So. It's tough.
You may not. We had a few hiccups here and there. For those still watching, interested enough, we've got 3 cameras set up. 2 of them are on a switcher box, and one of them is just the web camera that you can see me on right now. And so sometimes switching between them, one of those feeds will drop, and that camera needs reset. Or I'll make the jump too soon from one of the cameras on a switcher to the other camera on a switcher, and you'll get about 2 seconds worth of black screen going, oh no, I can still hear Johnathan, but where'd he go? But luckily enough, your music is kind of the primary medium where sound's kind of a big deal and all that, so it works out pretty well. What's the longest tour? I mean, have you ever done like tours like long form or even short form? What's a favorite tour memory of yours that
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
A 3-week tour in Florida. I go to Florida probably 2 or 3 times.
It's the nursing homes, isn't it?
Yeah. Hey,
you come back with too many handprints on you, don't you? I'm sorry. I can't help it, man. All right, we're done. I won't embarrass too many folks out there. I know there's somebody out there right now going, I got to squeeze him. No.
Yeah. There's so...
I'm going to make you crack, man. I'm
keeping this mind focused, folks. Focus. Got to just block that nonsense.
That's right. We're going.
But it's like I did a radio interview with Jim and I on the air from Long Island, New York, just the other night.
Now is that Jim and I or Jim and I?
Jim and I, not Jim and I. And she said, "What is your favorite place to perform? Do you got a favorite place?" I could tell you, hey, right now my favorite place to perform is Point A. But then tomorrow I'll be like, well, I love Point B, and then I love Point C. I love them all. So I can't, pinpoint an exact tour, but I love it when I get to go out. And if it's a 3-week tour, 2-week, 1 week, whatever, and being full-time, that's the stuff that I was doing. And but when I come home, I'm tired. Ain't no doubt about that. But I wouldn't trade the memories for anything. And I get the great memories from folks. You'll find all across the country. There are folks out there, and I'm sure all across the world, they've all got big hearts. It's not as crazy as what the media makes it out to be. Everybody, and there's some stuff out there, but there's a lot of folks that have good, down-to-earth hearts, and they welcome you, and you can laugh, make memories with them, and they'll tell you about this or that, and you grow. You become friends. Fans turn into friends, and that's what I love everywhere I go.
Oh, that's great. And you know what? That is a spectacular line. I think that's the place to end it. Johnathan Len, I appreciate your time, man. It was a phenomenal show. I've been absolutely entertained. Thousands of people on Facebook and a couple hundred on YouTube been pretty entertained this evening, and we hope to have you back. If this thing lasts a little bit longer, it'll be for these cameras, and if it doesn't last too very long, hopefully it'll be here for a show in front of plenty of people filling these seats.
Sounds great. Well,
Awesome.
Thank you, Varsity Center.